Today, we're going to take a look at what I would consider all of the entry-level sections of the Ottawa real estate market. We're going to start with the freehold townhomes and condo townhomes, and then take a look at the apartment condos. Now, all three sections are telling a pretty consistent story with some significant differences between them. Condo apartment inventory is up sharply year over year. Months of inventory is sitting around 5 months. The benchmark price is down about 6% from last June. Condo townhomes are in similar shape, and freehold towns are tighter than both, but even there, active listings are up more than 15% year over year, and prices have started to pull back as well. The short version, no matter which section you're looking at, is that buyers have significantly more choice than they've had 12 months ago, and it's showing up in the numbers across the board. Today, I'm going to walk through all of them, so without further ado, let's get into those numbers. So we're going to start where we always do here with the year over year sales volume. We're going to start with freehold townhomes, which is the top chart here. And we can see over the last 4 or 5 years, we're actually pretty steady. We're down a little bit, about 6.5% year over year for sales volume from last year. But the bigger stat here is actually the month over month change. So we had a pretty busy May for freehold townhome sale volume, and we saw a real drop heading into June. Now, we always expect May to be a little bit of a peak, but this drop between May and June is a little bit unusual because June is usually still a pretty busy month. So we saw about a 16% month over month decrease. Looking at condo townhomes, we can see the overall sales volume is a little bit smaller and a little bit more volatile as well, but year over year, we're down about 8.1%. And then we saw a very small month over month change of 1.7%. Looking at the next slide here, this is the same data, the same number, just presented a little bit differently. We can see the last 3 years for June we were looking at there, and then we can see that 16% month over month drop from May 2025 to June 2025. So you can see the seasonality here. Usually we peak in May and then come down a little bit in June. And then looking at the condo townhomes, pretty similar here. So we actually, compared to June of 2024, we're actually doing quite well in 2026, but not quite as well as June of 2025 for the condo townhomes. Now, looking at the active listings, so the number of listings sitting on the market at the end of the month, we start to see things diverge a little here. So we're up either way, looking at both freehold towns and condo towns, we've seen an uptick from 2025 to 2026. But for freeholds, we're up just under 16%, which is pretty consistent across the board. We saw a similar increase looking at single family homes and the market in general. But if we look down at the condo townhomes here, sitting at the end of the month on the market, we're seeing a 42.5% increase year over year. So part of that is you can chalk up to the slightly smaller sample size, but there's no question that's a huge increase in the amount of condo townhouse inventory that's sitting on the market. And we're going to see how that translates into the month of inventory in a couple of slides, because those numbers are pretty significantly different as well. This is a big part of the reason why. So months of inventory, again, some key differences here between the freeholds and the condos. We can see directionally they're moving the same way, but the magnitude of that change is pretty different. So we're up from 2.13 months of inventory in June of 2025, up to 2.64 in June of 2026 for the freeholds. So definitely an increase, significant enough, but not huge, and still definitely in that seller's market territory. Anything under 4 months of inventory, 3 months depending on who you talk to, is definitely a seller's market. But for condo towns, we went up from 2.76, which was definitely in seller's market territory last year, up to 4.27, which no matter who you ask is a balanced market working its way towards a seller's market. So directionally, as far as supply and demand, condo townhomes are moving slower than their freehold counterparts. And months of inventory, again, is what we get when we take the number of listings sitting on the market at the end of the month, divide it by the sales volume, or how quickly those properties were selling, and it gives us a great leading indicator. So when I look at this, what this tells me is that condo townhome prices are going to stay steady or maybe soften if this trend continues to go up, whereas the freehold market, it looks like properties are still changing hands pretty quickly. Prices are going to be a little more steady in that section of the market, if you ask me. But a lot can change that. That's just kind of where I see things going. Average days on market, always a great thing to look at as well. Actually pretty similar, despite this big spike that we saw in early 2026 for condo towns. But for a freehold townhome, you're looking at, on average, 31.4 days to sell. And for a condo town, slightly longer, 32.7 days. And we can see for the condo towns, it's actually gotten very slightly faster to sell a condo townhome from May to June, but almost negligible. But from last year, we're actually up 10.8%. So it was quite a bit quicker last year to sell a condo townhome. And for freeholds, we're looking at a similar trend year over year, but actually twice as much. So freehold townhomes were moving much quicker last year. They're still moving quicker than condo towns, but not as much quicker as they were, which is an interesting trend to take note of. Average sales price, always an important one to look at. And we can see month over month for condo towns, we're down about 3%. Freehold, we're basically flat. Year over year, we saw a modest price decrease of 4.2%. And then for condo towns, we actually saw only a 1% year over year decrease. So relatively flat for the condo town prices. It's just taking longer to sell them. And there's more condo townhouse inventory sitting on the market at the end of a given month. For freeholds, we actually saw a more significant decrease in price, which is interesting given that the sales volume and months of inventory is actually stronger for that section of the market. Jumping in now to the condo apartment section of the market, always the ugliest one to look at over the last year or so, and that there were no exception this month. Immediately, you can see that the sales volume numbers for June are just brutal, even compared to a relatively slow last few years. We are like at record lows in June of 2026 for the condo market. So 166 condo unit sales in a June is very, very rough. We can see we're well below that 10-year average for condo sales volume. And this next chart here, again, same data, but just confirms that this is not just a seasonal fluctuation. Like things have gone down compared to June as far as compared to May as far as sales volume, which is what you expect. But when we look at this compared to 2024 and 2025, which were not very good condo sales years, 2026, just brutal. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the summer, but a really ugly kind of peak selling season in general for the condo apartment market. Active listings, we can see we are climbing, but not at the peak levels we saw in 2017, 2018. A lot of that might be because, frankly, condo sellers are pretty discouraged right now. Like I know a lot of people, just anecdotally, who went up on the market for a bit, just didn't get what they wanted and then came down and decided to rent it and hang on to it for a while longer. I do think if prices were to perform better, if there was more demand out there and people perceive that there was some demand out there for these products, we would see this inventory number shoot up. We have relatively high inventory compared to the last few years and extraordinarily low sales volume. And if you know anything about months of inventory, which you probably have if you've watched these updates regularly, you know that that high inventory and that low sales volume translates into higher months of inventory, which is exactly what we have here. We went from an already balanced market level of inventory in June of 2025 up to a more balanced market, eking closer to buyer's market, which is where we hit when we get to 6 months of inventory for condo apartments in Ottawa. So directionally, what this tells me is the market is slowing down. And I always say months of inventory is probably my favorite leading indicator of where prices are probably going. Obviously we can't take into consideration other stuff going on in the world beyond our control, but just looking, all other things being equal at this months of inventory number, what we're seeing here is a likelihood that prices have a little more room to fall and that it's not getting better as the year goes on. So if you're somebody who is selling in the condo section of the market, you need to be really realistic about your sales price. And it may be worth just hanging on to the property for a little bit longer, unless it's just the right time for you to get rid of it. If you're buying, there are good opportunities out there. You're going to be able to negotiate yourself a below market value price, more than likely, which is great. But the reason you're going to be able to negotiate that below market value price is because you're building in the risk of prices probably going down further. So if you're buying a place where you're going to live for a while or an investment that you're going to hold for a while, and it's a solid property in a good building that is in a good location, good amenities, those things that really hold value, then this could be a good time to buy and hold. But if you're someone who's looking to flip or you're not sure you're going to stay there for a long period of time, or you're looking at one of those kind of like dog crate 500-600 square foot condos, I would say stay away from this section of the market right now, frankly, unless you know something I don't, or you're going to hold on to it for a very long period of time, because I don't see, particularly those smaller units, I don't see those prices going up anytime soon. Now, average days on market, we're down slightly from 46.4 to 45.6 year over year, but I mean, down to 45.6 is not really cause for celebration. A month and a half is basically the average days on market, that's a long time. That's much longer than any other section in the Ottawa real estate market, and it's up 1.6% from last month. So if you're listing a condo and you're listing it at anything other than just like a fire sale price, expect for it to sit on the market for a while before you find that right buyer. Benchmark price, always an important one to look at, and we can see prices have gone exactly the direction you could probably guess based on how the rest of this update has gone. We're down about 6% year over year, so down from 409 to just under 485 for the benchmark price, and we're down a little bit month over month as well. Again, exactly where you would expect prices to go based on what's been happening with inventory and with sales volume. And to be honest, when we're looking at this in June of 2027, I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar level of decline. So bear that in mind if you're looking to buy into the condo market right now. If you're buying, you're buying with a risk premium. So that great deal that you're going to be able to negotiate yourself is still going to be great. Like if you can afford the payments and it's a good building, go for it. Just know that you're probably going to have to hold it for quite a while before you see a financial return on that property.